Okay, so we are connecting to our friend that is worlds away, to Charlie, the scientist. Do we have Charlie here?
Yes.
Okay, so Charlie, because we are videotaping this today, although we've met several times before, you're familiar with me, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you give us a little background of who you are and how you connect with with the client Phil today?
I am an individual. I'm considered an alien to Earthlings, and I'm considered to live on an alien planet, much farther than one could measure or have a concept of. Thus, we don't think it's important to provide a number in terms of distance from Earth. My relation to Phil is actually via our incarnation state, or origin place, and that being the collective, which is a sentient cloud, if you prefer. To visualize, it's purplish, and it's often composed of lightning bolts, electrical surges, or plasma rings, accentuations of energy. And within this universe, the collective is our home. We don't originally come from this universe, so the collective wasn't formed in your universe. It was formed in a higher universe, and it descended into this universe in order to try to explore it and navigate it and to understand it and study it, and to incorporate what it can learn from this particular universe, its frequencies, its habits, behaviors, epiphenomenon that can also be observed and broken down subsequently.
Okay. And as we've discussed before in our previous sessions, because we've had a few visits, correct? Your connection to him you're not a past or a future life of his, right? Which makes this kind of unique.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that's absolutely the case. He is his own individual, and I am my own individual, and I am the individual that the collective has helped incarnate on my home planet of Kylox. And I am but one of the 355 souls that have been incarnated by the collective throughout this universe.
Okay, and so when that very first session that I did with Phil, in that very first session, we happened onto you. You were described yourself as a scientist on a terrestrial object that was doing work with, was it light or no, free energy experiments?
Different types of energy systems, but yeah, definitely free energy project or perpetual energy machines.
Okay, and that terrestrial object you refer to as M1?
Yeah, that would be my workplace or place of work.
Okay, and then your home planet, again, is called what?
It's called Kylox.
Kylox, okay. And so today, are you at M1 or are you at Kylox?
I'm actually getting ready to go back to M1.
Oh, okay.
You actually caught me literally in the midst of going to the... it's a giant cylindrical room that you enter, or we enter rather, on Kylox in McCree's Neck in order to transfer ourselves physically to the GO of M1.
And what have you been doing while you're back home on Kylox?
I'm visiting my family, and I also participate in a program, as most of the adults do that aren't extremely high up in our society, with the Glassnocks and helping with the youth and helping provide different perspectives in terms of the youth that are trying to figure out where they're headed.
And you said the Glassnocks? Is that how
Mm-hmm.
what is that?
That's what is utilized in the educational realm for the youth. There are these areas that are most often out in the forest, and they're clearings, and first of all, the classes are always headed by a single individual that is the primary caretaker of the educational knowledge and dispersal of that knowledge. These Glassnocks, though, you can think of them as two logs or two two trees that have been cut, or two trees that are just standing, and the branches are trimmed, and then in between the two tree logs standing, and they would look more like a log, like a long log that maybe was traversed down your rivers. If you're familiar at all with your lumbering,
Mm-hmm.
They're standing in the ground and they're naturally found, and then we as a society rely upon these educational instructors, you would call them, to locate these places. So they serve the role that like a shaman would on your planet, and at the same time they serve as also like a ranger. Do you guys still use that word?
Sure.
Like a trailblazer. So they have to go out. Their responsibility prior to starting classes and beginning their teachings is to go find their classroom. So they have to go out, and if they find one, then we consider that individual blessed in a way, and they're able to then utilize what's available in between the two posts, which is unlike really anything on Earth. It would be like if you had water, like you know how you throw like a pebble into your water system, or like a lake or something,
Mm-hmm.
and then the radial rings sift outwards in 360 degree direction. These are not unlike water and stuff like that, but they are standing, if you want to say it that way, in between the two posts, and they're upright vertically. So they serve almost as like a screen at times for the kids to utilize. And these screens are archives of all the collected and amassed knowledge that is kind of from the generations that have inhabited that particular part of Kylox. So the closer you get to the city, you have more knowledge and more experience with industry and working with metalloids, for example. Whereas some of these clearings are very focused on like herbs and medicine and how to synthesize plants on our planet for use in space for our soldiers, the home guard, and At the same time, for preserving our immune systems.
Okay.
Depending on the given state. Because, for example, like one thing that we understand in your species doesn't generally have a wide concept of is the notion of specific plants that one would take if they were traveling to and from space on a regular basis. So utilizing particular chemicals that will preserve and protect and potentially strengthen one's immune system and metabolic systems and everything in the body, the physiological systems, even if they were traveling to and from our home planet to whether it's M1 or some other terrestrial object, or if they're going into deep exploration.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Now, just to give a little background, in relation to Earth time, are you in the current time, the past, the future? How would you describe that from where you're at to where I'm at?
There's something that makes this really difficult to explain in your language, but the best word that I can come up with right now is stilted. There's something about time and the way that it is experienced, but moreover the way that it how it lives, how it practices itself, the facets of time as an entity, if you can think of it that way for a moment. So we sense that, or I sense that you're confused by my explanation. If you're taking something from your Einstein, for example, that things are relative in space,
right?
Constants, time, whatever it may be that's been said, amongst humanity. Time itself, the best way I can explain it is in your area of the universe is stilted compared to my time. So my time is actually a little bit ahead of your time.
Okay.
So I'm in the slight future, if you want to call it that, but to us and to me in particular, it seems rather meaningless.
And for you, what is it like when we contact you? How do you experience that?
It feels like a mental telephone call. It feels like I have to just go do something else for a few moments, and so far I've talked to my own employer, like my own colleagues and my boss, like the commandant specifically, about this, and I've talked to my family, like my wife, about it, and I've kind of talked to them about how it happens, and everyone's so open-minded already about telepathy on Kylox and in McCree's Neck that this has been well accepted so far as I've explained myself by my peers.
So you tell them that you're speaking to an Earthling?
Yes. And they ask, they wonder, because they've heard, some of them have heard stories and some of them remember more strongly about our explorations. And so they remember Earth to a degree, and some of them have asked questions about, how they've been doing. How have they progressed? Where are they at now? How did that planet turn out, sort of thing. So I get a kick out of having these conversations. It adds to my life.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. And so if you could explain to us more about when you travel back to M1, what is it that you're working on there, even currently?
Well, we're always working on many things, and I get assigned to projects, but I'm never like the sole proprietor over any one project, so I have many hands, and there's a revolving door of people in and out. But we come and go as our schedules permit, and we basically are able to do whatever work's needed at the time. So I was going to speak to you real quick about one of the main things that I was most recently working on, and I'll be working on when I get back to M1 after our conversation, I assume, is specific to high frequency, high density particles of energy and transporting them from A to B, C to D, but with the variables of light and also the variables of that which your planet still calls black holes. So we could be talking about strong gravitational pulls. We could be talking about particle waves and solar wind potentially. So that could, we're just trying to perfect the ability to maintain a connection of energy. So you could be transmitting information, you could be communicating, it could be a simple hookup between machines that are communicating with each other regarding different machinations of one machine and what's relayed to the second machine. So the importance being that we've got these situational realities in the cosmos that we're trying to build systems for and yet maintain the integrity of the strength of the signal, if that is clear to you. So try to imagine two nodules and like four beams of energy that are coming out of each, but they're hooked up to one another via those beams of energy, but there's a swirl in the beam of energy, and you could draw like an S in between them, but the point is the bends are us trying to maintain the integrity, as I stated about the strength of that energy beam, that connection. So what we're really doing is we're perfecting and enhancing the strength of communicating with ourselves and our creations.
Okay, and that's used primarily in your universe or other places?
On our planet, but it mostly is going to be used on the TO, the terrestrial objects, and probes, and then deeper space explorations. So right now, I can let you know that we're not out in space right now with some mothership exploring right now. We're really concerned still with the ongoing strife and attacks that are affecting the outer TOs and the continued species that we've been confronting. But other than that, we keep setting out probes, and what that means is then you've got typically 2, if at most 3 individuals together, and so they're far more dependent upon their machine to be that much more capable. And then they have robots or little drones so they have tracked vehicles and then flying devices. These are small devices for assessing weather. If you end up on a planet that you've been able to enter into via the atmosphere, you can check the weather with one of the drones on board the probes. So the probes aren't really. We're getting the sense that the probes that you guys might be used to on Earth are much smaller, but these are ships. We call them probes because we're not deeply exploring or trying to settle. We're trying to study.
Okay. And if you would, explain to us how it is, what the process is like as you travel between Kylox and M1.
It's pretty peculiar to even us still, the feeling at times. It's a ticklish feeling. The best way I can explain it to an earthling is you literally start to disintegrate upwards in what might look like fire. It's not fire in reality. It's just a lot of energy. So what you're doing is you're dematerializing from that particular place in space and time, and you're rematerializing. So you watch your the particles of yourself, your body, pixelate into little tiny squares, and then float upwards in a stream of a river of pull and gravity upward, and then it starts from your feet, goes upward toward your torso, and then finally your head, and you become brighter as you're doing that, and that as it's going up your body, it's that ticklish feeling.
What causes the body to start disintegrating like that?
There's a centrifuge that's around the base of the platform that we stand upon. So the platform is like a whitish or off-white color, and then there's a distinct, almost black, rim to the edge of it, and there's a step down, and in between the platform and the ground, it's half a foot in height upward, there are these big panels of where this whitish light, again, not so bright and not too intense to look at, starts to appear. And the more that it becomes white instead of see-through, that means that the machine is on and it's about to start working. Now, there's a particular spot. It's a lot like your sci-fi films. That's the impression that I'm getting, I believe, via the collective and Phil.
Okay.
But in terms of your sci-fi films, we're getting this. I'm getting the image of another platform that you step up on, and then it's unclear what's above, but it's bright. And for us, there is this. You would think of it as looking at the bottom, if you were holding a flashlight.
Sure.
And you're looking up at that panel. So you turn it on, there's a bulb in there, you can see the bulb, and then there's a screen for where the light terminates.
And do you have a particular sensation? Is it that tickly sensation as you're traveling from one space to another? Or are you aware of it?
It's the sensations that you start to feel then of floating head first, but you're weightless, and your body starts to become this grayish color, like your old steam engines, them spitting out smoke, like that color. And then you start to have these electrical like sensations kind of like going through. So like similar to your static electricity moments with others on Earth, where you might like briefly shock. It's not a strong shock, but it's like little shocks that are going through your body, and they appear as like red and white. And they're like little red and white like like little red and white droplets that are coursing all over the body very quickly and in different areas at different times. But you can see yourself and imagine yourself pretty easily in like all of the filters, if you want to call it that way. So you can see your skeletal structure. But then you just see this swirling cylinder type warp of like, you're not sure where you are.
And then when
you're seemingly just traveling through energy and space.
Okay.
And then you start to rematerialize from the top down.
Okay.
And your feelings of discomfort can vary depending on actually where your thought processes are.
Sure.
In the midst of travel. So if you are worried about where you're headed and what's on the other end and what's in store for you, for me, it's my workplace. So if I'm worried about, am I going to get fired or something like that, something that an earthling would worry about for sure. We would experience, any one of us, from my planet would experience this discomfort in after you've rematerialized. Again, there's that tickling feeling, and then you rematerialize, but it's like you put on like clothes or some shoes or something like that, or boots for the first time that don't totally fit.
Okay.
And so everything's just trying to work out its kinks or something along those lines, and then you get used to the process. It's really not that uncomfortable.
Okay.
It's not like you come back and the name Picasso is coming to my mind. It's not like that at all.
Okay.
We've never had any mishaps.
You acclimate back in pretty easily.
We might have had mishaps when like the technology was first created amongst my civilization, but not since I've been around or any time near.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And do you have any updates that you want to share?
Well, and real quick, just wanted to talk about that centrifuge. That centrifuge requires not a mixture, a combination. That's the word you guys would use. Of two chemicals, and it's actually liquid version of that metalloid that I spoke of not too long ago to you guys. I spoke of a liquid metalloid that wasn't present in your realm and or on your planet, and so you're not even familiar with the name. But we had sourced it and we had utilized it, and it's involved in this cube-like structure. The metalloid itself is spun. Well, it's first combined with another liquid metalloid, specifically mercury, and then it's spun counter-rotationally at really high speeds, and then that is able to create, as far as I know, a strong enough magnetic field where you are able to then more easily manipulate particles and gravity. So you can make particles in that space. It's basically creating a magnetic field of its own, and it's a strong one. So you can make the particles in that area go really close together, or you can make them go really far apart. It was also a part of our attempt to formalize our training systems for the weightless situations that our deep explorers were concerned about and wanted. It was part of the training program for that. Okay. There's just a lot to say, so.
Okay, well, you describe it very well. It's a bit above my head, I'm afraid.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's all right. It's fascinating to listen to. I'm trying to follow you as you describe all of it.
I'm sure that, I think that we've talked before about Phil's artistic qualities.
Right.
If we haven't, then I know about them somehow via the collective. So I would suggest that maybe he try and put it to paper.
Oh, good. Okay, yeah, he's very good at that, isn't he?
Because the way that one thing that I can share with you that you may not know as a species about this universe that we both reside in right now, the same universe, is that in terms of grasping knowledge or finding the source of it,
right? Just
know it's right there.
Okay.
It really is not a matter of, it's not always a matter of you have to set up this, exploration and its funding and its logistics and its, the right minds and the right moment and the right society, voluntarily or by force going and successfully exploring and finding something that houses knowledge that's, forsought. The knowledge, and a lot of times what people are seeking actually pertains to their own lineage. So it's for me and for Phil, the reality is it's right there in the collective. Like the collective's ready there to offer it to us.
Right. And that's how you access them, and that information comes through you through him?
Yeah, a lot of times I think that's the best way I can make sense of it. Mm-hmm. As, someone who has studied in multiple realms of the sciences, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it seems like my society might be further off than yours is at the very moment.
Sure, I think
so. In regards to certain subjects that we've been talking.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much for that. All right, so before we bring the collective forward, is there any other information that you want to share with us today?
We are aware, at least I'm aware, that your planet is making actually a lot of strides in terms of its understandings of deeper space and what might be going on in certain places. But the one thing that we're going to, and this is coming from other people that I've spoken to about Earth, the encouragement of keep going. The one thing that is coming to my mind is the recent explorations of your Kepler telescope that's
right
in deep space and seems to have found multiple types of planets, and your scientists and your planet has seemingly been in happiness that there's like news about other types of planets out there. And what I want, I guess, to bring forth to the table for you guys and for humanity to realize is that there are going to be many anomalies out there that won't match up with your current models of how planets can form and exist. So rocky solids can have or somewhat less than solid surfaces can have completely solid cores. One planet that we have found has like a fairly, I think that, as humans, you guys might find this fairly humorous, but the surface is like an avocado.
Oh.
And or pudding. That's the best that I can come up with for you.
Okay.
Regarding examples, but the core of the planet is actually ice. So it's really solid. And we're actually really baffled by this planet. We're not sure how to navigate and or if there is civilizations that are living inside this substance. But there is nothing except for this pudding-like substance that goes all the way down to the core.
Interesting. So are your scientists exploring that planet currently?
Mm-hmm. They're studying it. They're actually preparing to send a probe to it.
Okay.
But we don't think we're going to be able to land. We only think we're going to be able to do a stronger analysis of the planet by first circling it.
Okay.
And I think we're going to plan to circle it 2 or 3 times. And it's not like your planet, it's not watery. It's not blue. And as far as we know, it doesn't have any continents like Earth has, as an example. But it's not like your moon. We'll say that. It's not this, rocky outside.
Okay.
And there's no, crust to it. So we've been able to take, a strong X-ray image, and that's something we're able to do with one of our machines. But we're not able to get much more than that. So I can tell you what the composition of the stuff looks like to me. And I've seen we have a tendency to lay things out on blueprints in images, and even after we've printed them. So that's where I've seen it.
Okay, understood. All right, well, thank you so much for that. Okay, so with that, we're going to ask that we have Charlie step back now. And we're going to ask for the collective to come forward.